Why are you making the choices that you are making? This is not accusatory, by the way. It's a genuine question. Why are you making the choices that you are making? This is a question many of us appear to skip over in our day-to-day lives. We get so set in a rhythm of making choices nearly automatically that we often don't pause to explore why we continue to make the choices we do, or if there is potentially a more resonant option available to us. Now, it's understandable why we might not explore this. First off, you may be under a lot of pressure in your life. So having explorations like this might seem like a luxury. From my perspective, asking yourself why you make the choices you do on a regular basis to check in with yourself so that you can understand how you are navigating life is one of the key ways that you can shift yourself from a life where you are passively being prodded around by the forces around you to one where you are actively and decisively navigating the experience that you are in. Now, if this intrigues you, if this resonates with you, then I invite you to listen to this video because together we're going to dive into perspectives that have to do with being aware and intentioned as to why we choose the things we do. And additionally, we're going to start focusing on a why in your life right now so that perhaps we can get to the root of it in, under 20 minutes or so. I'm Danielle Lynn, and I host exploratory conversations such as this with very cool creators such as yourself. And in today's conversation, we're going to take a look at one of your core whys in your life right now. And by the end of the video, I imagine we're going to have a bit more clarity as to why you choose that why. So first things first, I'm going to invite you to use your own discernment while you watch this video, or any video for that matter, so you can check and see what resonates with you and what does not. So let's start by choosing something that truly matters to you right now. Now, it doesn't matter whether you see this thing as a positive thing or a negative thing. What you are being invited to choose right now is something that has your primary focus at the moment. Bonus points if this has had a lot of momentum behind it. All right. Now that you have this thing in your mind's eye, the question you can ask yourself is, how am I currently believing that I am benefiting from focusing on this thing? In what way do I perceive that I am benefiting by keeping my focus on this thing? Whether you consciously or unconsciously believe you are benefiting, on some level, some part of you likely believes that by having your focus on what you are focusing on, it is being of assistance to you. The interesting thing is, what we give our focus to often amplifies in our life, consciously or unconsciously. So, first, check what the answer to that might be. All right, so then the next question I have. How does this thing impact your day-to-day life currently from your perception? So now what we're doing is first we have the concept of the thing. We have the belief around the thing. We have the overall thought of what we think we get by having it in our field. Now we're taking a look at your day-to-day. And what I'm looking at here with us is your average day-to-day as it relates to the thing. What you are examining at the moment is you are allowing yourself a field of clarity here to see if this thing that you are focusing on is contributing to a day-to-day experience that you enjoy embodying, or if you might potentially be in an experience where the ends justify the means, or if on some level you simply believe this is the way it is and you must accept something that is less than ideal for you. This is not asked with judgment. It is an invitation for you to explore what might be currently present in the field of your focus at this time. In the case, for example, of relationships, some people have a strong attachment to a certain relationship. And sometimes the day-to-day of that relationship overall is very delightful for them. And sometimes I talk to people and they relate to me that the relationship itself is actually highly challenging day to day. And then they reflect to me, oh, but of course relationships are supposed to be challenging. What I often do at that place is I simply ask them, are you enjoying the day to day? This is the same thing for a job, for a career, for anything else. There is sometimes an inherent belief that people have that no pain, no gain, or you must suffer, or you must travel this path, or even if you are experiencing a lot of distress in your day-to-day, that that's just part and parcel of the journey. What you are examining at the moment is you are allowing yourself a field of clarity here to see if this thing that you are focusing on is contributing to a day-to-day experience that you enjoy embodying, or if on some level you simply believe this is the way it is and you must accept something that is less than ideal for you. I invite you to simply observe how you feel about the experience you've been having, connected with the thought you have that this is the thing I am choosing. To just very impartially take a look and evaluate for yourself overall if you have been enjoying the way the journey has been on a day-to-day level across various periods of time in relation to the thing that you are saying is important to you in choosing. One of the reasons I am inviting us to take a look at this together is that many of us have elevated a certain thing, a certain relationship, belief, goal, person, to be of utmost importance in our lives. So much so that we may be willing to sacrifice other preferences or sacrifice certain perceived happiness or just make other sacrifices in our journey. And sometimes I have found that people will make sacrifices and follow a specific path thinking they must because at the current juncture in their lives, they don't realize that there may be other possible configurations, other options available. And what happens, I find, if we suppress the part of ourselves that is voicing potential dissent, we start to build a tension. But the interesting thing, from my perspective, is that this tension is really hiding a fear of what will happen if we give ourselves permission to listen to the voice and to, with curiosity, say, well, what else is possible? Because when we do that, we open up a portal into the unknown. And to the structured life, the unknown is very inconvenient. What do you mean I spent all those years doing this and building that only to move to some other place altogether and start a completely new job and do something that my degree doesn't require? What do you mean I'm gonna completely turn in this direction? and not go down that path that I've been walking for the last 15 years. Because sometimes we overbuild the importance of a specific goal when at the core, many times the reason we chose the thing wasn't because, oh, I absolutely needed to be a doctor with a practice. When we get back to the core reason of the choice was, I want to live a life where I am enjoying myself and passionately helping people. And this is one of the ways I can do it. And perhaps for a while it was. But I find that when that inner voice starts to speak up, when we reach a place where we're like, is this really the way? It's not that we had necessarily made a wrong turn in Albuquerque, so to speak. But it may be that we moved as far as we could with the information we had for as long as we could. And now that we're in a new place, we discovered, well, yes, I still am feeling inspired to do this kind of work, or I'm feeling inspired to do some kind of work to help people. But right now, perhaps that person doesn't feel as effective helping people in the position they're in. And so it's not so much that they made the wrong choice, but rather they made a choice to the full completion until they arrived at a new crossroads. And now that the inner voice is speaking up, it may be inviting them to consider, well, what matters in this thing that you chose? What matters in the choice that you've made and in the choice that you're making? And I find that these opportunities, while seemingly inconvenient, while seemingly uncomfortable, from another perspective, are some of the most sacred invitations into the core honesty that we have with ourselves and with our lives. When we think of people that have midlife crisis, mid-quarter crisis, right? What I see oftentimes is people who have built up a momentum in a certain direction of life, believing that that momentum would provide them with happiness, only to arrive at a certain point and discover that the way they were living their day-to-day life was always in a state of delay. Because there were many people who made a choice thinking, well, once I reach this, I can be happy. So they lived their day-to-day life constantly delayed from present moment satisfaction, because on some level, maybe they believed they needed to do that to be successful, to do the thing, because sometimes there are some people who have beliefs that say that. And maybe for a while you tried on that belief, and maybe for a while it worked for you, or you thought it worked for you. But then at a certain point, perhaps you said, well, what am I doing all this movement and action for if I don't have the time or the energy or the space to appreciate my life now? Which is the place that many find themselves in at one point or another, when they explore things like structures of jobs in which they believe will give them what they want because maybe they don't love the work they're doing, but they believe that it provides them with a certain amount of finance, which once again, there's no blame or judgment about that. There are some who can do a job that they may not care much about, but it brings them finance and it's delightful. But I usually ask people, what about your day-to-day life? Because if the job that you are having, if the consistent structures in your life wear you down to the point where there's a part of you always living for tomorrow or yearning for the day past, then what's happening is the current patterns you're in are perpetuating an unsustainable cycle, which usually lead to some form of burnout or breakdown. And in my explorations, talking to hundreds and hundreds of people of various experiences in life, most people make choices because on some level they believe it will give them something they want. And for many people, that want is emanating from an unconscious level. Because while I found people are very, very good at describing what they don't want, you might be surprised at how few people can articulate with clarity what they genuinely want. And what I mean by that is a lot of people go, well, that's easy. I want money, or I want time with my family. Well, I'll tell you right now, my experience is most people don't want money. They want what they believe money will give them. And time with your family is wonderful. What would you like to do in that time with your family? What does the day-to-day look like? Because if you had all the time in the world with your family, eventually you would still yearn for a certain kind of structure that allowed you to live life in a way that was flourishing for you. And when we feel stressed and pressured, we often can gravitate towards being real clear about what we don't want or what we think we need to alleviate the stress and pressure, which I have a lot of empathy for. When we have very emotional, powerful, impactful experiences, they can sometimes be so strong that it appears to be the only way reality could be. And sometimes when we have a very strong experience like that, whether it's perceived as negative or positive, it can be so embedded in our perception of reality that to even consider that there could be a different way might seem overwhelming or might bring up distress. You can often tell if this is the case if you start to feel irritated at the concept or idea of even looking at it. Oftentimes, that irritation is an indication of a part of yourself that is attempting to protect your energy and potentially your psyche from any further exploration, because there's another part of yourself that may feel fear at what happens if you open Pandora's box on this exploration. There are many of us who understand on some level that perhaps the way we are approaching life may or may not be sustainable for us, but we may keep on keeping on because it is what we know. And there are experiences recorded in life that show oftentimes people will choose something uncomfortable that is familiar versus an unknown that may ultimately be more delightful to them. But since it's an unknown, it could also potentially be worse than the situation they're in now. I'm going to offer a few more closing thoughts today that I imagine will be of assistance one way or another. When we're doing this kind of self-exploratory work, we are sometimes dealing with the realm of the unconscious self, the unexamined self, which can sometimes include our shadows, our repressed fears, our repressed ideas or perspectives about ourselves. And this can be very tender ground for a person. Some of the ways that you can explore this are through things like somatic practice, somatic being of the body, somatic therapy. You can do this with things like internal family system exploration. In the Self Alchemy Lab at the moment, which you can find a link in the description, we're about to go through the Self Alchemy integration process, which is a version of this inner exploration. So if you would like to explore one of my own processes of approaching these inquiries, then please feel invited to check it out and join if it's resonant. And in all cases, I thank you for joining me on this super cool conversation. It's been such an honor to talk with you. And if this has been of assistance, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe. Maybe forward it to someone you think would appreciate it. And as always, I look forward to our next conversation.